we want this to be a pretty interactive session, so we don't want to kind of wait for questions at the end. Just keep firing them in. If you've met us three before, we're quite chatty, so we haven't kind of structured this as like a talk or anything. This is literally a conversation between the three of us that you get a nice window into, and we want you guys to be interacting all the way through. So we're happy to pause at any point and jump into some of the questions that you've got. So if everyone's all right with that, just give me a thumbs up and we'll get started. Cool. Just remind everyone, it is recording. So if you're camera shy, feel free to turn your camera off, but it's nice to see your faces. Cool. So quick intro. I'm Rhondell. I go to Reach Derby, and me and my wife Katie, who will introduce herself in a second. We do the student work at Reach, and also great background. And also, yeah, I'm a co-founder of the Arda Collective, which is a startup community interest company, and we'll be opening an alcohol-free bar in the middle of Derby City Centre, which you'll get to hear a bit more about that in a second. Cool, I'll pass over to Katie first. Do you want to introduce yourself? I would love to.
So I'm Katie. I'm artist and owner of Preserved by Katie. I'm a nature artist. So I use nature as my art medium. And through that, I have the honor of preserving lots of people's wedding and funeral flowers. And then I also create my own artwork. And then I have a little line of accessories, jewelry and necklaces, just to make some more affordable artwork to make my business more sustainable.
Cool. And then go one more person, and Darren.
Well, my name's Darren. I was ordained an Anglican priest, but now work for the Methodist Church as a pioneer missioner and a job share with my wife. And we've set up a coffee roasting company that teaches people how to source, roast and brew ethical coffee and build community in the process of that.
Awesome. And yeah, so like I said before, I mean, we're really excited about the seminar. It's not too structured. We'll be just kind of chatting through some of the things that we're quite passionate about and opening up some questions to you guys as well. And the Synergy team themselves are keen to encourage adventure. And we thought this kind of fit really well in terms of the adventure of entrepreneurship and business. This won't be a 5-step process on how to start your business or anything like that. But we're going to talk about it through the lens of our experiences and the lens of our faith as well. And Darren's going to do a quick 30 seconds, 2 minutes on the topic of Missio Dei, which we were talking on Wednesday about. And he said it so beautifully, so I wanted him to repeat it today.
Oh dear. So basically, we often get caught up in thinking church, but one of my favourite theologians talks about if we concentrate on the kingdom, then the church will take care of itself. And so one of the things that social enterprise does, it can be a great response from the church to participate with God in the building of his kingdom as we anticipate the coming of his kingdom in fullness. And so one of the things that we do is we look for where God is already at work or wanting to work, and we join in what God is already doing. And that's basically what a social enterprise is. God is in the gap. You see that there's a missional need somewhere, and God reveals that to you. And so in particular, our context, we've set up a social enterprise that meets a gap or finds out where God is already at work, and that is working with people coming out of prison, the transition from prison life, reintegrating back into the community. And so that's kind of, we've seen God is at work there, seeking to build something, and we've just stepped into what God is wanting to do.
Awesome. So quick question for you guys. Like we said, we're talking about building kingdom through business, and the phrase kind of Christian business, or what do you guys think of what that means? What would, if I said Christian business or church as business to you, what would kind of spring to mind? Happy for you guys to throw it in the chat. And then the second thing, more to think about throughout this discussion, really. What's God put on your heart that you think that you can really start something with? That's for you to kind of keep throughout this conversation. We'll obviously be talking about our context, but always keep thinking, actually, how do I relate this to what I really feel like God's put on my heart, what I would like to step into, where I see God working in our cities. So I think we were talking about it on Wednesday, Darren, when we talk about church as business. Do you want to explain a little bit more about what you're doing? You've said to me before that what you do is church, and you don't attend a church in sense of Sundays.
So I mean, so one of the things is for example, the thing that kind of sets us up as a church is we recognise that there's brokenness within God's creation. Do you know what I mean? We talk about the fall. Do you know what I mean? We just need to look at the world and we can see that. And so one of the things that we see ourselves doing is enabling God to reconcile his creation and 4 aspects of brokenness within God's creation. So there's a broken relationship between man and his creator. So if you can create an initiative that creates community or safe spaces for people to build community and discipleship, then you're tackling that spiritual need. But also the economic imbalance within society, power structures. You know, a business can really, really do some work in that. And then you've got the social aspect. How do you bring subcultures together? How do we as church bring subcultures together so that people can learn from each other? And so the social brokenness. And the other aspect of brokenness is ecological for us. You know what I mean? Ethical sourcing of coffee, appropriate farming methods for the coffee and all this kind of stuff. So there's 4 aspects of God's brokenness within creation that social enterprise, that the church actually can do through social enterprise.
I see people writing notes. So do you want to just repeat those 4 again? Just to give
so spiritual brokenness, discipleship, safe spaces to meet God. Social brokenness, we can see it within society, those subcultures, the addict, the business person. Economic brokenness, the disproportionate use of power and wealth. So one of the things that social enterprise does, it takes Joe Bloggs, who's been on benefits for 20 years, can now pay taxes, can now contribute. And so social mobility. And the other aspect is the ecological. So it's the ecological, economic, the spiritual and the social.
Yeah. And then to give you a little bit of a context of what we're doing at Yada. So Darren mentioned before about noticing the gap. And I think that's something that we're quite excited for you guys to take forward. I think you within your own context, within your own cities, you probably realize that there are certain gaps in different places, basically shortcomings that you can fill, and you're just trying to think, actually, as a church, how do we fill it? We went a little bit in a different direction. As students, we recognized that essentially going out at night, there was only really one option. So we wanted to create a space where we could just be totally different, essentially. What would be the complete opposite of what the nighttime economy looks like as it is currently. So we were like, well, alcohol is the biggest driver in the nighttime economy. So we just flipped that on its head and said, can we do alcohol-free bars as an alternative night out, really? Most people didn't get it. Some people still don't get it. But we started a few trial pop-up nights, and we worked with Derby City Mission. And recently we've become our own community interest company to basically give it a full go, really. There was, God kind of showed up and essentially offered us a building, and we were running out of excuses, is the best way of putting it. So we're really going for it. But we're in the startup stage, which is a bit insane. So between the 3 of us, we're all in different stages. So I'm definitely in the startup stage. We're about to launch an online shop because currently during the pandemic, we can't open. Darren's probably 2-3 years down the line, much more established, working with the council, working with churches across the city, and stuff like that. And then kind of coming on to Katie, you are not what we would say is a Christian business, but you work your faith throughout it. Just tell us a little bit about why you're doing what you're doing, and then a bit about how you are working your faith into it as well.
Yeah. So I guess why I do it is because I love it. I believe I am made to be an artist. I believe that is who God made me to be. And in creating art, I feel most myself, and I feel like I get to see who I am through God's eyes. And that is the place that I most connect to God. I think we all like take characteristics of God that we most relate to, and I definitely relate to him as an artist, as a creator, and I love that I get to work that out with him when I create. And I started creating the art that I do in my final year of university, and in that I was really exploring how God takes us when we are broken and ruined and dirty, and he makes us back into something beautiful. And that's what I try and recreate in my art. I'm taking nature when it's dying and wilting and making it back into something beautiful. So that's why I do it. And the other question was how I outwork my faith in my business. Yeah. I guess that's a tricky question. I think, in my day-to-day life, you have all the things that we do as Christians. But I think it's, obviously I have no work colleagues. So it's finding other people in like our environment. So I work with lots of people who have just lost family members, and I'm preserving their funeral flowers. So it's kind of being peace and joy in that situation. And yeah, building friendships there, and also with other artists. Yeah, I've built quite a good community with people online, and there's another artist in Derby who I talk to regularly, and I like, when you put the pieces together, so I could see that she was a young woman being a self-employed artist, just lots of things, and I was like, that's not, I guess, necessarily normal for someone in that situation. I don't want to sound rude, I put the pieces together that maybe something had happened as to why she had left her job, and she was suffering with some mental health issues, and I've been able to be a friend to her in that. And once lockdown's over, we're gonna start meeting for coffee and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I can see we've got a hand and I think a few comments on the phrase of Christian business, which I'm glad everyone's picked up really, and it's something that we wanted to discuss today. Personally, I don't like the term either, but it's been interesting, especially as a not-for-profit. We've been challenged, I'd say, through different funding streams, basically. And to be totally blunt, the question is, how Christian are you? Which is quite hard as a question. I spoke to a guy who leads a national movement, and he was kind of saying it's almost like you have to play the game, play the words. But yeah, I agree with quite a few of you actually. The term Christian business is interesting, and I totally don't agree with it either. But Darren, I think you have some more thoughts on that.
Well, I'd be interested to hear what other folks have to say.
Yeah. Patrick, did your hand raised, did it kind of mesh with that, or was it about something else?
Kind of did, I think. I love the idea of social enterprise, and I love the idea of it reconciling brokenness and spiritual safe places. I live in the countryside, there's hardly anybody there. So I'm a Christian. So how can I set up a Christian business? I have to work with people who are not Christians. And then how do you bring in the brokenness? How do you solve spiritual brokenness?
Well, yeah. I mean, is anybody familiar with the passage in Luke 10 where it talks about people of peace? So one of the things that the Missio Dei really talks about is that God is already at work in people's lives long before you ever get there. So when you get to a person, do you know what I mean? We have to trust that the Spirit of God is moving. It goes ahead of us. And so the conversations that you have with non-Christians, people are a lot closer to God than we think sometimes, you know what I mean? And I think he's made a way somehow for you to have those relationships. And so if it means having non-Christians working for your business, sometimes non-Christians are closer to God than half the Christians out there. Do you know what I mean?
I think especially with us, like we're in the middle of that tension and that conversation at the moment. How that phrase, how Christian are you, will be outworked in everything we do. I think it's the culture that you create, the way you handle your finances, the way you one of the conversations we're having now is how do you express grace in a work environment? And that's pretty tough, and a conversation we're still working through. And I'm definitely invite you all to kind of consider that when you're moving forward into starting something, is that initial culture that you create, it needs to be kind of set on some values, set on some things that are definitely unbreakable in that sense. Mike, you've got your hand up, and I know Trevor will come to you afterwards as well.
Great. I just don't know how to put my hand down. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I came across a website recently. There was offering kind of mentoring for, I don't think they call them Christian businesses, but if I can use that term, that's what they were saying. And they had these great they called them 3 bottom lines. And they said a Christian business, they didn't use that term, had to be financially sustainable, have a social impact, and have spiritual transformation. And I just thought that was an amazing success. Like, yeah, of course it does. But just the fact that they've done the work to just name those 3 things, financially sustainable, have a social impact, but be about spiritual transformation, I just found kind of nailed it. I thought it was really helpful.
Sounds a bit like church, doesn't
it? Yeah. I find the interesting one off the back of that, and feel free to ignore this question if it doesn't take in the direction you want to go. But I was struck by it was the scale of it. I think it's one thing to set up a business that you could get some income from. That's a feat in itself. But to grow a business that not only sustains you, but where you can give employment to other people, if that's part of your model of social transformation and have an environment where you can provide that spiritual transformation, I thought that's a sizable business. That's quite ambitious. And have we always been great in the church? I think we do small quite well, but like you're talking like employment and lots of customers and lots of income to be able to have a work environment where you can mentor or spiritually impact the people. And I know, Dan, I don't know too much about your business. I've seen it more from afar. We haven't chatted that much about it, but I would be interested at some point in this call just to hear how you've dealt with those things of scale, because I know that you're doing community with the people you employ, as I understand it, and how you built things to that scale to provide the employment and create that community and environment.
Can I just add on top of that, when you answer, Darren, it'd be good to talk about the finances element of actually how do you view finances in that way?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, you get people to do the stuff that you can't do. So I'm good at discipleship, I'm good at relationship stuff, but there's a business aspect that needs to be done ethically and well. And so get people who are good at that. Keep me away from it. And so, and I mean, I'm a church. I think I'm an evangelist. I think that's my primary gift. So, not in the sense of trying to proselytize people, but having good conversations about, who is God to me, who is God to us, and and things like that. So I think there's a bit of a tension actually between running the business and actually doing the other stuff. And I suppose we're just in the process of scaling up. So we've got our first employee. We've just advertised for another 3 jobs. The bigger it gets, the more complicated it gets. That's what I've been told, and that's his business.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit about? I mean, this isn't a question that we kind of discussed before, but you've recently started upskilling yourself through coaching. Again, with that talk of Christian business, but not Christian coaching is just business coaching. Tell us a little bit about that and how you found it basically. And then Trevor, we'll come to you, and Graham, we've got a few questions there, so we'll pick apart those.
I guess it's kind of just what Darren was saying there, that I know that I'm good at making my art. I know what I make is good quality. It's beautiful, that it's wanted, but the business side of it, I don't know how to run a business. That's not why I got into this. But as a single person, I can't really afford to invest in other people to do them things for me. So yeah, I've joined a coaching program. I don't know what else to say. What was the question?
Just how you found it as I guess person of faith. When you said to me before that some coaching kind of is the complete opposite. So just how you.
Yeah. So lots of the coaches that I see online are like talk about manifesting and like just very much like, if you go for it enough, you'll get it. If like, yeah, all that kind of stuff. So I picked my coach very carefully, and I'm part of a group coaching program. So there's 2 coaches, and they're both wonderful. And I don't agree with everything they say, but I feel like I'm in a comfortable enough place just to leave that, and that's fine. They can say that still, and other people can take that and use that, but I won't. But yeah.
Going to Trevor. I can't see it. Oh, there you go.
To talking about how we disciple people and such like. I've been running my business for about 25 years, and it's just me. Although at the moment I'm going through a major change of focus, which if things work out, the company will grow and I'll be employing people. But I meet with a lot of the small business owners in Leicester. I know a lot of them around, and we can disciple people who we don't employ. One of the things I found over the years that is really interesting is that particularly small business owners, they want to run their businesses well, and as part of that, they want to run it ethically, and I start talking to them about Christian principles and kingdom principles, and they're going, yes, I want that in my business. They're not Christians, they're not interested in God or Christianity, but the principles behind it are something that really resonates with them. And for me, that's a way in. I can talk to them about that, and then maybe they'll go off and do it, maybe they won't.
And it's kind of like what,
and then I can talk more about my faith.
I was just saying, it's kind of like what Kate was saying earlier, that it's systems and that sit behind everything that works. Like that takes a lot of time, but as Trevor was saying, people do resonate with the biblical principles and the idea of discipleship and raising new leaders and kind of giving them a biblical viewpoint of how to live rightly in terms of right relationship with each other as a culture, and then live rightly, I guess, in kind of conducting your business. I'm conscious of time. I know this is a really big topic, and the idea was this is
it's all right to disagree. In fact, if you're working with people where you agree with everything, you'll never actually learn anything.
Yeah,
you've
absolutely.
got to have, I would say that all business owners, you've got to have people around you who you disagree with and who bring a different viewpoint in, because that will sharpen what you know to be true. But it may also open up something else that you think, well, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe we can look at that and explore that in a different way. So, I know some people who really don't like having people who disagree with them around, and they're never growing. It's one of the ways we grow as people, and the ways we can grow our business is to have people who will speak in and challenge us with things we disagree on.
So just conscious of time, I know Graham's got a few questions here, which are actually pretty big ones. How can Christians in business develop cultures which dismantle the inequalities we discussed earlier? So just for Darren, so we were talking about race relations and justice and righteousness. That's a big question, one that I don't feel totally qualified to answer. But just to kind of give it to it, I think it's, sorry,
I'd love to answer it, but it's a whole other conversation. I mean, I think we can do this, actually. I think the church is better positioned than anybody to do this. If you can create spaces where you bring subcultures together, that's a prophetic statement to a world that wants to divide. And I mean, it works particularly well working with ex-offenders. When we used to have a Sacred Bean Eucharist, where you would have people from the council, police officers and ex-offenders having a community meal together and having communion using coffee. That's a prophetic statement that challenges the inequalities, and the whole the whole social mobility thing's another conversation altogether.
Yeah, and I think going after, almost like positioning your business to go after those inequalities. And me and Katie are passionate about fostering, and we really want to foster one day. But actually, one of the things that we've been talking about is those who are leaving care. So there's a bit of a gap. There's a massive gap there in actual fact. Those who are leaving care tend to be homeless within the 2 years after they leave care. And we were thinking, how can we develop a business that will essentially go after that group, and let's disciple them, let's give them opportunities, let's pay them for the work that they're doing, help them manage their finances, and help them move towards, like Darren was saying, a contributing life. But at the moment, that is an embryonic idea. That's something that we chat about over dinner, with no real plans ahead at the moment. But I know there's a cafe who does that over in America, and they literally built their cafe around essentially an internship program that disciples care leavers. I know there was another message before.
Just ask whether anybody's got any experience of those kind of things on a bigger scale, because the examples are great, though they're all from quite small scale things, and they're some are startups and just getting going. And I'm wondering if people know of companies they work for, or other companies where there is a culture which is not necessarily Christian, but is clearly trying to work against the way that we have done things in society.
Darren, you're on mute.
Has anybody come across the Timpsons? They are pioneers in this. They've been doing it for years. You go into prison and recruit people from prisoners, ex-drug addicts, and people that have got skills that have been used for bad. And it just, I mean, the owner, John, I think it is, has written a couple of books on upside down business or something like that. Really, really remarkable stuff.
Are they a large scale business?
I would say they are. I would say, you know, they own Max Spielman Photographers, the Timpson Key Cutters. You know, they're a national business. You know.
Yeah. The other one I've heard about is the Grace Network. They're probably worth looking into. They work in partnership with each other. Basically, they've I think they're born out of a monastery, and they have several businesses that work with different groups. So it's almost like a collective of businesses that are ran from a biblical lens. But yeah, they start businesses, and I think they're based in Gloucestershire. But they're one to look at. Those who've, like you said, it's not just small, but actually they've got several businesses on the go that are working towards addressing inequalities. But yeah, I think you had a third question as well, didn't you? Although we do have 1 minute left, don't we, Gaynor? 5. We've got 5 minutes left. Good. Cool. One of Graham's other questions was, has anyone know anything about how Christians can position themselves well for helping the nation emerge from the pandemic economically? Which I think is another pretty big question from Graham. Yeah, I think I know that HTB as a network are working with the government to upskill. So basically they've planted a load of job centres within their churches, essentially, so to offer skills of coaching to those who've been made redundant, those who've lost jobs suddenly, lost businesses suddenly, and helping people to be coached through that phase. But that's so far the only church network I've heard of focusing their efforts at coming out of the pandemic economically. Not sure if anyone else has heard anything else about that or other things. Nope. I will take that as not much is happening, which is probably an issue. John, are you saying I thought John was saying something. You're on mute. Never mind. And then finally, one of the Graham's questions was how does the church create a strong culture to stimulate and support people in business? And this is definitely one of the things we wanted to talk about today. Yeah, how do we encourage entrepreneurship, business, to kind of come through our churches? That is, it's definitely a tricky one. I'm sure that in every church there are people with ideas, people with entrepreneurial ideas, who really want to kind of get going on things, but I don't know how well that's communicated between congregation and leadership, or congregation and each other, basically. John was putting his hand at that time. Do you want to go for it?
I will go for it this time. I will banish my embarrassment and say something. I would begin that discussion with another question. And that question is the church even aware that business is a legitimate avenue to bring the kingdom to society?
Hallelujah.
I would tend to say that the church is ignorant, maybe not against, but is ignorant, is unaware that is a viable, legitimate avenue. And in fact, I would even go so far to say as it is an avenue that Jesus Christ himself encourages us to pursue. Yeah. We are told to use money for the kingdom, not to love it, but to use money to further the kingdom, because it's there for a reason. But anyway, I would begin with that question.
Yeah, no, really good question. One of the things we were talking about on Wednesday was essentially that question of how can business and entrepreneurship be a part of God's redemption plan? And that's essentially what you're kind of pulling through there. And we think, obviously, that it's a great opportunity. You're not only, as Darren was saying, you're not only addressing the 4 issues of brokenness, but you're giving life physically and economically to people who are coming through. Darren, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's church. It's basically church. Do you know what I mean? We often think church is a certain thing, but this is just a part of being church, not going to church. This is who we are. And God asks us to use everything that we have, all our resources and our talents, to extend the kingdom. And business is just a part of, it should be just a part of church.
Yeah. And I don't know how, well, in terms of the percentage of your time, you spend the majority of your time at work. No, not if you have a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, that is the majority of your week. That is the majority of your time spent. And if you're like having that being used for the kingdom, that is about discipleship making and discipleship in general, can only be a good thing. But I guess it's the church has refined that to church programs. In what does church programs look like?
Rhondell, one of the questions that I would have right there on that very topic is the question of whether or not there is such a thing as the sacred secular dichotomy. Does that divide actually exist? Or in the kingdom, is everything sacred?
Interesting. That's a deep theological conversation right there, man. Oh, yes.
And we have 1 minute left. I think absolutely that's a great question. And as I was saying before, that was the position of the funder that we were applying for. Actually, they were what percentage is secular, what percentage is evangelical? And I think that is a hard conversation to have when essentially you're asking for funding. And I think Katie's got a good example of actually starting a business yet still tithing is a small thing. I don't know if you want to end with that, Katie. We've only got 30 seconds, I'm so sorry. But yeah, it's one of the big small discipleship steps, but actually there should be no separation. Yeah, that is a very big question, and I think it's a good question to end on, although no one seems to be kicking us out yet. I've lost Gaynor. Where is she? There we are. Hi, Gaynor. Patrick, do you have something else to add?
Yeah, just a network across the churches would be great, where we can find, if I want a graphic designer or an artist, I have no idea.
Yeah, I've always wanted that in our church as well. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Thank you.